What's up guys, the Strong Boys 19 here. I hope you guys are doing very well amongst yourselves. And this is going to be a different video that I would like to do for any music fanatic out there like myself. I have been really interested to go into some more different types of discussions on music, to bands and albums, and this is one that I have not done at all until right now. This is going to be a random selection of albums that are strong, great, and brilliant albums that a lot of people see as, you know, one of the greatest albums of all time that I personally don't agree with. None of these albums are bad albums if you're going to be overreacting, because some of these albums are some of my favorites, but these are not, to me, like classic selections and, you know, not one of my favorite albums of all time. And yet I have got to heavily respect and praise their own impact and significance from these albums that have been out to the world of music. So let's get started. I'm looking forward to see what your comments are. The first one, Radiohead, OK Computer. This was a really big record for the band. This is the follow-up album after The Bends. This is, to me, a strong record with a really great purpose into the improvements for the band as musicians. It's heavily detailed with powerful musicianship on a lot of these tracks. But this is, to me, not one of those albums that I would really come back to so much. And yet alone, it's still a great album. Obviously not my favourite Radiohead album, because my favourite is Kid A. And, by the way, this album, along with some of these, I've mentioned previously, of albums I consider to be overrated, but they're still great stuff. OK Computer is still one of my favourite Radiohead albums, but it's not, to me, like a top to bottom, from start to finish, you know, banger after banger classic. The next one, this is going to be really obvious for a lot of people. I still like this album, but again, when you get into the overhype reaction and see this as one of the quintessential ones, you know, of all time, this is to me not one of them. Nirvana with Nevermind. I still do like Nirvana a lot, and by the way, I am looking forward to get the 30th anniversary edition of my favourite Nirvana album being In Utero. But with Nevermind, it's not just because of Smells Like Teen Spirit, which is, by the way, the song that really has been just taking the absolute mick of overplaying, but then there's still some awesome songs on here. You know, Lithium to In Bloom, Something in the Way. It's a really different sounding record. They're first with the record label of the David Geffen Company, and with Butch Vig being the producer for this. Still a really good album, huge seller. Same goes with the next one, AC/DC Back in Black. Obviously the first album with Brian Johnson. I do love some AC/DC a lot. My favourite period from the band is the Bon Scott era, and Highway to Hell, in my opinion, is much more consistent and so worth it for stronger material than this album as a whole. You Shook Me All Night Long is one of those songs, by the way, that I could personally not want to hear all the time anymore. And same goes with, you know, Back in Black. But You Shook Me All Night Long, that one is just aggravating to me. There's still some really good stuff on this album, but yet alone, it's not, to me, a perfect record in itself. You know, one of the most popular rock albums of all time, and people praise it. It's very good, but to me, not one of the milestones. The next one, Judas Priest, British Steel. And this is one of the yet to be released editions at the time, 30th anniversary 2 CD edition of this album. I really like Judas Priest. They are one of my favourite bands, and with British Steel being the one that really hit them up the map with radio airplay and, you know, playing the big hits of Breaking the Law and Living After Midnight. Living After Midnight is later on one of those songs that I would personally do without, because that's really going to get on my nerves. There are really good songs on this album, like Rapid Fire to Stealer and, you know, Metal Gods. Not my favourite Judas Priest record, and yet alone it's not one of, to me, the top 3, because I love other Judas Priest albums, like the classic that is Painkiller. I'm a big fan of Defenders of the Faith, and, you know, Screaming for Vengeance. British Steel, while it's still a really, really good record, never really clicks with me as one of my favourites of all time. Some random piles of records I'm going to pull out. The next album, Pink Floyd, The Wall. I apologise for the annoying lighting changes, by the way, but everyone knows The Wall. It has been known as one of the biggest albums of all time, one of the most influential, massive hits for a lot of Pink Floyd fans. And I have done a re-ranking of Pink Floyd's discography, and this album was not in my top 5 at all. That moment when I never once thought that this is, to me, like a masterpiece, beautiful production to stunning tracks, you know, but in terms of the consistency of the concept, it's not one that I would really be getting myself hooked in with, like I would with other concept albums. The next one, David Bowie, The Rise and Fall of Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars. I love David Bowie, one of my favourite musicians of all time. It is a very strong album, but in terms of favouritism, Ziggy Stardust is not one of the later Bowie albums that I would listen to heavily, because I'm more of a big fan on some of the later stuff. Station to Station, Low and Heroes, and Aladdin Sane, the follow-up after this. To tell you the truth, I prefer to listen to that album in a favourable way than this. You can't go wrong with Starman to Suffragette City, Ziggy Stardust, amazing material on this record, and with a concept that I would like to appreciate and to get into more than the Wall's concept. But yeah, Ziggy Stardust, one of my favourite Bowie albums, just not a 10 out of 10 album. The next one, The Velvet Underground and Nico. Out of all of the Velvet Underground albums with Lou Reed, this is the one that I would play the least. Originally, it was slated and despised by the public when it came out, and nobody cared about this sound. It was all into heavy contexts on drugs to prostitution, masochism, and all the other, you know, really dangerous things lyrically. And now people see this as, you know, one of the game changers of popular music. Obviously, with popular songs on this album of Heroin, I'm Waiting for the Man, Venus in Verse, and they are strong songs. I actually think some of Nico's stuff are better than tracks like Run, Run, Run and Black Angel's Death Song. Sunday Morning is a beautiful opening song, but yet alone, for me being a fan of the Velvet Underground, I prefer White Light, White Heat and the self-titled album more than this one. And Loaded is brilliant as well, but the self-titled is, to me, my favourite Velvet Underground album. The last one, this one is going to anger a lot of people. From a band that I have really appreciated and still do, and the early stuff is what I love more than the 80s stuff. But this is their biggest album. So many people praise it from their biggest hit that's on this album. And yet alone, their third album is, to me, the favourite, not this one. Queen, A Night at the Opera. A Night at the Opera is really, really great stuff on this. You know, it's full of this joy, this whole loving passion. And besides the other songs, like I'm in Love with My Car, the Prophet's song, Love of My Life, Bohemian Rhapsody, I'm pretty much really sick and tired of hearing that song. It's great for what it is, but you know, with the whole momentum, the really big killer of overplaying hits like this album's most popular song, it just drives me insane. And I would sometimes leave out You're My Best Friend, yet it is as a happy, jolly, pop-style song. To me, there are other Queen songs that are not the singles, that are strong ones I could do with more than the singles. My favourite Queen album is Sheer Heart Attack, and I've just recently played Innuendo, that I would listen to Innuendo and pick it in a favourable connection more than this album. So there you go, A Night at the Opera by Queen. That is that, guys, with the list of random albums that I've chosen that I still like, some of them that are the favourites, but I don't agree as, you know, one of the best things ever in music and not one of the classics. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Do make a list of your own if you want to be interested in doing something like this. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll keep you guys posted for more videos in the near future.